regardless of why all this is happening, whether it is a man-made thing, whether it's just the earth going through its cycle or whatever, it is happening. And I think that's what we need to focus on is as preppers and as just people in general is this stuff is happening. So we do need to pay attention to that. And the why is less important than the what at this point. I saw this the other day from Fox News, and they had a little chart where Colorado was even included in it, with the whole western half of the United States is vulnerable to having power outages and having shutdowns. Texas is one that they've talked about quite a bit. California, it seems like every year they're concerned about this. So with this stuff going on, and then you had some stuff on the Hoover Dam and stuff as well. We're already strapped. Just the high temperatures are going to cause the grid to be this strapped. But then you're going to put electric vehicles on top of that and all of the other stuff. And then you've got the Hoover Dam, which is going to be empty in a number of years, or I don't know how bad that actually is.
No, probably pretty soon, like next year or two, it sounds like.
Now not empty, right? But empty enough to where it's not going to be able to generate power. Is that what you're saying?
Well, they're running into two problems, right? They're running into the issue of water that comes down into Lake Mead maybe is slowly drying up. And then there's a certain point where they can't release any more water. They won't release any more water for California or Arizona because they'll need it all to service Southern Nevada. Right. So, and that'll be basically shutting off a lot of the power and stuff that goes down to Arizona and Southern California. Now, it doesn't supply all of their power, but it's a part of it. And the power grid's already teetering.
Yeah.
Right. Like we see the problems with the power grid. Right. And like you just showed, we're having more fires because, hey, there's record heat. There were a bunch of buildings in London were burning down yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? Because of record heat and grass fires. It's like the hottest recorded temperatures in London. They have fires happening all over the world. I just recorded a podcast that's coming out tomorrow with Fabian Omar and out of Brazil. And he talked about it early on before we got on the show about how they have all kinds of fires going down. And he's like, it's our wintertime. So the problem's going to come in is when they don't have, at some point, if they get to the point where they don't have enough water to service California and Arizona, that's because the dam is the water levels dropping. They're using too much, or they're not having enough getting in there. Well, if it gets to the point where they have to shut off California and Arizona, they're not that much farther away than the point where there's not going to be any water flowing through the dam possibly. And that means Southern Nevada is not getting any power. Again, this teetering power grid. I think the greatest threat that we have from the lack of water out west right now is the threat to the power grid with it. Because like you said, it's the entire Western United States is part of that power grid. It's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you've got Texas, who's got their own power grid, and they're already talking about sporadic blackouts and stuff like that. You've got California, it's going to happen because it happens every year. And then you put on top of that the wildfire and the drought and how dry everything is. That's one of my big fears out here is wildfires, because if something like that does happen, you are on, there's not a whole lot you can do. There's a lot of mitigation stuff that we do for the fact that if something does come roaring through, maybe it misses the house or doesn't get it that much, or, that's a cross your fingers type thing. But when it comes to wildfires and stuff, there's not a whole lot you can do. And if it's going to go where it's going to go.
Do you have your brush trim back?
Yeah, we've got, like, in the garden beds around the house, it's rocks. It's not the wood chips and stuff like that. I try to get rid of the pine needles and stuff. That is a pain in the ass because we got so many damn pine trees, and they just drop so many pine needles every year. It's insane.
How close are they to your house, the pine trees?
Most of them are outside of I've got a fenced backyard area, so they're outside of that. So I would say
how far is that?
50 feet. I do have one tree that is a big, tall ash tree that is close to my deck that I've been wanting to take down for a while, but it's like 75 feet tall. So you're talking a couple grand to get that sucker, and it's not something I'm taking down because if I did it, it'd come down right down on top of my roof. I know it. So
yeah.
So
no, that'd be something good to get taken down then, because it's that's always the problem with brush fires, right? That's people they have that tree or something too close to the house and it goes up crazy. You said you have a deck, like having the ability. I think a lot, like for you being rural, man, if you had a little utility trailer and got one of those 250-gallon IBC totes and put a, the water tote, well, they make them for food grade, like liquids and stuff that they have at, big restaurants and things like that. Those like white big bins with the metal cage around them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could clean those out and fill them up with water, put it in the back of a little trailer, and then find yourself a little water pump and throw it with it and get some like 1-inch old 1-inch hose line from the fire department or something like that and be able to spray down some stuff around your house.
Yeah. And like Brandon,
your house what's that?
Oh, I was just going to say, like Brandon said in the chat, fire can jump. So there's, and which is true, there's no guaranteed method. It's just all of this stuff you can do to increase your odds.
Well, and the thing is, when the firefighters, if they come out there to try to save a house, they're going to look at the houses that are easiest to save.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you have your tree cleared away and all that, and they look like, oh yeah, well then they can, they'll come up and try it. They'll stand a better chance of trying to save your house.
I watched.
I was thinking.
Sorry,
on
go
that
ahead.
IBC tote thing, man. That might not be a bad alternative to you because you still have your same well problem. You haven't figured out, your backup to your well. That's 250 gallons of water you could have sitting there in case your well went out. That would buy you some extra time to figure it out.
Yeah, maybe figure out a way to put it like on top of the barn or something. Get the gravity instead of the pump. I wouldn't have to worry about batteries and power and stuff like that. That's not going to do a whole lot if there's a fire, though. I'm going to have this trickling.
I don't know, man. I think you have, with you and the progress you've made on your well, about the chances of you putting an IBC tote up on top of the garage are about zero.
Hey, if I could get other crap to stop breaking down around my house, I'd be able to put a little bit of money into that. But, Murphy's Law just will not leave me alone. So, but yeah, the fire thing is always a big issue around here. And even when it's, 50 miles away, we've had a couple that were about that far away around here. And you still have that uneasy feeling because it could spread quickly. Just so many things. So fire is no joke. When it comes to that stuff. And for preppers, a lot of preppers do live in those rural areas. So, or even suburban areas. So It is a big issue.
Well, and you're having too. So the way, and I don't remember the actual measurements of it, but the way they figure out what the fire danger is they get a certain amount of pine needles and they put it on a stand. And then they lower, now they have computer models, but this is how they used to do it. Then they would lower like a tinder down to it. And when those pine needles are off gassing enough vapor, it sets them on, the match sets them on fire. And sometimes it's a foot, 2 feet above it maybe, because they're off gassing so much. As things dry out and things heat up, all those pine needles and all that shit laying down on the floor of these forests and everywhere is off gassing. So it increases the chances of those fires happen.
Yeah. Hey, Liberated Lady asked in the chat if I've got a metal roof. I don't. We have just the typical shingle roof. But I don't, I think if it got to that point, I don't know how much a metal roof would, maybe from stuff dropping down on it might protect a little bit. I guess it wouldn't hurt. But no, we just have that regular old roof. A couple years ago, Lisa and I did a podcast on this, and we showed a video of firefighters, how they actually fight this stuff. And it's really damn interesting how they do that stuff. Go on YouTube or something and look that up after the show's over. It's pretty interesting how they basically try to guide the fires and pick and choose where they want to try to make it go and everything. You can't stop a
fire, man. You got to get the fire to try to consume itself, or guide it to go into an area where there isn't any, humans or any habitation, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. So pretty interesting, but with all of that stuff, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to be concerned about. I think this summer you've got the rolling blackouts and stuff. I don't know that's something you can do a lot for beforehand. And as preppers, we should have a lot of that stuff figured out anyway. If you're talking about having to go overnight or something without power, or, in the evening, I'm sure if there are rolling blackouts, it's going to be during peak times when a lot of people are using air conditioners and stuff like that. So make sure you've got that figured out as far as keeping yourself cool. And with me, what we do, or what I do anyway, is during the day, I'm down here in the basement most of the time because the temperature is probably 10 degrees less than it is upstairs. So I don't have to I don't have to crank the AC. And this is because I'm Scrooge, and trying to save some money. But
you and Joe Biden got more and more in common every day.
Yeah, except I can complete most of my sentences. Not all of them, but I can complete most of them.
Yeah.
But, think about those different things that you can do. That saves money, and then I'll crank on the AC about an hour before Lisa gets home so she doesn't have to deal with that stuff. But, think about all of that stuff, especially down in Texas, where if it is going to get that hot in other areas around the United States, it's probably going to get really toasty down in Texas.
And with the power grid, we keep hearing about how our infrastructure is outdated. Our power grid sucks. It hasn't been updated in years. I was looking earlier at California power plants. They've built a couple of battery state plants where they just store a bunch of energy. But overall, they haven't built a new power plant in I think decades out there. They actually have California's 2 coal-fired power plants still working.
Do they?
Yeah. And I think one of them is specifically for Los Angeles. So where they talk about all this environmental stuff, again, they got coal-fired power plants out there. We're working. I think one of the coal-fired power plants is in Utah, but the energy is for Southern California. So they're pumping it from up, or transmitting it from up there. Yeah.
California's such a leech.
Yeah. No, we're not going to put it in Southern. We're not going to have any coal-fired power plants in Southern California. We're going to put it in Utah.
Yeah, that's typical. That's like this administration's whole policy and everything. We're not going to, we're not going to mine our own oil. We're not going to refine our own oil and do all that stuff. We're going to get it from somebody else. We're going to offload everything. It's not just this administration. It's the whole world. We're going to offload everything to China. We're going to offload everything to Russia. We'll call them the bad guys. Same mentality. We're still going to use the shit. We're just going to bitch about it while we do.
And think about it. One of the reasons why we outsource so much overseas was because of the taxes here made it cheaper, and more profitable to outsource stuff overseas. So the government literally set up the situation for people to go to foreign countries to produce business that ended up crushing our society's manufacturing capability or capacity, to the point where we're at now, where we're so dependent on China. The government did that. It's just like the inflation. The government did that.